Okay, so and everybody will be able to see that as well?
Okay, sounds good. We're on second anyway, so.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. You all set to go? Who's taking over? Or would you like me to run it?
I'll take it over, Brad.
Very good. Proceed when you're ready.
All right, I'd like to call the February 28th meeting to order. Our first line of business is new business, a notice of intent by Meisner Brem Corporation, DEP number 2060827, project location 4 Tamarack Street. Is anyone here to speak on that project?
I think that Meisner Brem typically joins online, so they may have had the same problem I was facing.
We have a few representatives here.
Beautiful. Great.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
My name is Ian Ainsley. I'm an engineer from Meisner Brem Corporation. I am here with Martin Burke, the owner and applicant of this property. So this is a single-family house that we are proposing on a vacant lot. It is 4 Tamarack Street, which is off Princeton Boulevard. This property is entirely within the floodplain. What we're proposing to do is construct a house on piers, basically, and lift the first floor above the floodplain elevation. In order to access the house, we're going to have to extend Tamarack Street. So we've shown that on the plan as well. We will be seeking planning board approval for that work. We are going to have some stormwater management on the property to support the single-family house. We're going to have a rain garden to purify the water from the driveway, and then a underground chamber system for the roof. We are proposing no net loss of flood storage, so we're not proposing any kind of filling that would take away from the floodplain. I think we're actually providing a little bit more by digging out the rain garden, about 200 cubic feet. We're actually providing a little bit more flood storage. You may remember this property. We were in front of you a couple years ago for a very similar project. What we were proposing to do then was a garage and a basement, and we were going to have vents to allow the flood water to pass through. You actually approved that project, and it was appealed by the Mass DEP. So we went through an appeal process with them. They ultimately won out. They didn't want the basement, the flow-through vents. So we've come back before you with, the typical setup that you do for these sorts of structures that are in floodplain, raising it above the flood elevation. So it's very similar to what you saw the previous time, except this time we're not taking away any flood storage. So happy to answer any questions.
So is there a structure there already?
No, it's a vacant lot currently.
Okay. Just trying to, okay. So it'll be next to the house that's already there?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
It's a pretty well-built neighborhood.
Yep.
It's sort of one vacant lot, small lot that's surrounded by a bunch of houses.
All right, I'm going to open it up to the board. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have questions. I think a few of us were here last time a similar project on this particular lot came, a similar project on this particular lot came before us in 2020 and 2021. From what I can see, the difference here appears to be the fact that you eliminated the foundation, even though it was proposed to be a flow-through. And instead, we have pilings. Now, the statement that I don't really agree with in your narrative is that the pilings don't take away any flood storage, whereas you have 2.5 feet of piling in the floodplain below the, above the 100 and below the, was it 102.5? And we don't have a diagram of what those pilings consist of, their size, their material, and we don't have a chart which we require on all plans in the floodplain of the compensation that's going to be provided to take account the fact that those particular pilings, I'm presuming they have to be a certain mass to hold the house up, and there's 16 of them, I believe.
16 pilings, we do show
That has to be calculated, and that is replacing space in the floodplain.
So we do show size of the pilings on the plan on the bottom right corner. They are labeled and shown. They're 12-inch
Okay.
diameter.
I can't see that from here. Can you just tell me what they're made out of?
It's a 12-inch diameter circular wooden piling, so they're made out of wood.
Okay.
If I can
So,
jump in.
What would be the
so-
replacement?
Hold
Total.
on, Brad.
Yep, sorry, I thought she was done.
So if you divide, if you multiply 2.6 times 12 inches, even though they're circular, then you'd have to account for the circular rather than square. What does that number come up to?
So technically, you are correct that they do take up a very minimal amount of flood storage. Mass DEP has previously allowed that before without compensatory storage. That's how structures get built on like the ocean, things like that. Oceanfront properties, in order to lift them above the floodplain, they have to put them on the piers, et cetera. Generally, there's no elevation that they can give that compensatory storage, so that's how it gets done. That's kind of a long-standing past practice by Mass DEP that, support columns are considered de minimis, basically, that they have a negligible impact to the flood storage. But to answer your question, if they are, let's say, a foot diameter, and I think it'd be probably looking at probably about 3 cubic feet per piling. So if you were to
Times
multiply that by 16, you'd be looking at 48 cubic feet, which I would consider pretty minimal.
Okay, well, that's fill in the floodplain, and that needs to be included on your plan and calculated at each elevation.
I would be happy to provide you a table.
I don't see any place on this lot, if it's a flat lot, at 100-foot elevation, I don't see any area where you can use for compensation of that particular number, whatever it is.
Well, it's something we would have to take a look at. Like I said, I don't believe Mass DEP has typically required compensatory storage for support pilings. And I can provide you documentation stating that.
We have other neighborhoods in the city that the DEP has swooped right in and zeroed in on that if they didn't think that was compensated. So it's very, very difficult. And I think we kind of gave the benefit of the doubt last time you were here, but you know, it was written out in no uncertain terms that you have to compensate. And we want to see how and how much you're compensating, where you're compensating, and in the chart that shows the compensation from the top of the present ground up to the floodplain elevation.
I believe Brad had a question. Brad?
So it's the policy of this board that we consider pilings not to be de minimis, and we do require compensation. We require that compensation in each foot per foot elevation. So in each, from the 100 to the 101, from the 101 to the 102, from the 102 to the 2.5. And historically, this board has not approved projects which do not have that compensation. So the plan is presented in our tenure and our history. It is something that we typically do not allow. If you can find compensation for each 1 foot zone, then that should be shown on a table to show the cut and the fill, and should include more than the pilings. It should also include any staircases, any other objects, part of the buildings, any structure, any add at all in those zones.
That would include the stairs, for instance.
Okay, then we will provide those calculations.
And a rain garden is a wonderful addition to any property such as this, but it's completely below the flood elevation, so it really has no impact in this particular case.
Yeah, it's a technicality. It's not really for flood compensation. It's just for rain events to purify the water and give it a place to go in the low storms.
I haven't even mentioned yet the extension of the roadway, which theoretically, that I'm not sure how municipal law works with that, but that's impervious surface that you're adding, 4 inches of asphalt, which is going to take away at least 4 inches times whatever the area of that extension is of flood storage as well.
Well, the way we would do that is to strip away 4 inches of the ground currently and just replace it with the asphalt. So your finish grade would be the same.
If you're still below the floodplain, though, you have to compensate for that.
I think that the engineer is correct in this case, because a flood case assumes that the ground is already saturated. So the perviousness of the top of the ground isn't relevant, only the addition or subtraction from volume added or removed from the flood zone.
And that's really my point. The elevation of that ground would not be changing. Only the material.
You're changing the absorption value of the area, however. But even without that, I'd first like to see the compensation for the pilings, the stairs, and any other parts of that building that are below the flood elevation.
Okay, we will provide those.
it would appear to me that, it's probably not possible on this lot unless you acquire, additional acreage or something. But,
We'll see what we can do.
Are there any more questions from the commission?
How long would it take for you to revise your plans? When would you like to continue?
When is your next meeting?
Our next meeting is on the 13th of March, I believe.
Yeah, so I think we could get something in
correct.
within a week.
Yeah, as long as we can have it a week before the meeting, then I'd like to make a motion for this item to be continued to the March 13th meeting.
I think we technically need to open this as a public hearing administratively. Brad or Louisa may know more about that, but there's somebody on the Zoom, I think, that was interested in speaking.
My apologies. Thank you.
No more questions from the commission? I'd like to open this up to the public for any questions. Is anyone on Zoom or in here who would like to ask some questions? Okay, so I'd like to close the public meeting.
no, we don't want to close.
Oh, I mean,
We're
I'd
going to continue.
like to continue the public meeting.
Brad made the motion.
Brad made a motion to continue to the March 13th meeting. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so this will be continued to the March 13th meeting. On to our next order of business. We have a, thank you for coming. We have a notice of intent by Phoenix Ave Realty LLC, DEP number 2060828. Project location 55, 75, and 77 Phoenix Avenue.
Thank you, and good evening to all. For the
Hi there.
record, my name is John Geary of Geary & Geary LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Phoenix Ave Realty LLC. With us tonight, we have Ed Kirby. Ed is one of the principals of Phoenix Ave Realty. We have Jim Henley and Troy Stearns from Civil Consultants, Civil Engineers Consultants, and we have Angie Verge of Angie Verge Landscape Designer. She's our landscape designer. As the Vice Chair mentioned, we have filed a application for a notice of intent to redevelop 55, 75, and 77 Phoenix Ave into 3 new commercial buildings. We would be demolishing the existing 3 buildings that are on the site to make way for the 3 new buildings. Ed and his brother Mike are also the owners of Atlantic Millwrights, which has its principal office in principal place of business in North Reading. They are looking to expand their business into this site on Phoenix Ave for the intended purpose of using the facilities for industrial warehouse storage and associated office space with that storage. So we're before you tonight requesting an order of conditions so that we can work within the buffer zone of the delineated resource area on the site. Ultimately, once this site is fully developed, we will have less impervious materials than what currently exists on the site. We will have a professionally landscaped site with the landscaping taking into consideration the bordering wetlands, and Angie will talk a little bit about that when she presents. And we'll have a site that complies with stormwater management and the standards associated with that. So at the end of the day, the site will be much improved than what it is from what it is now. The applicant is also required to obtain site plan review from the planning board and a special permit from the planning board. We are scheduled before the planning board for Monday, March 4th for that purpose. We also received the staff comments, DPD staff comments, which were essentially all factual. I would suggest supportive of the project, of the proposal, but as we go through the hearing, we're happy to elaborate on any of those comments or address any concerns or answer any questions. So with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Jim and Troy so they can go through the technical review of the application. Thank you.
Good evening. Jim Hanley with Civil Design Consultants. I think John kind of gave you a good overview as to what the project is. Tonight, what I'd like to do is kind of walk through existing conditions, proposed conditions, and then kind of where things stand as far as local and state review, and then hand it over to Angie. The one thing I'll say is that this has been a long design process for us. The site is a challenge in the sense of its current condition. We probably started the process last July, give or take. We filed an ANRAD with your commission. I believe it was in September of last year. At that point, we had presented an existing conditions plan that showed the BVW lines as well as the floodplain. And after a meeting or two, you issued an ORAD. Before I get going, I'm wondering if you'd allow me to just approach the bench here and provide you with some.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So essentially, the printout that I just provided you is an ortho photo. I think it's off the town's GIS website that shows the condition of the existing site. I think it was as of 2022. So you kind of get a sense for what's going on out in the site, and then we're going to walk you through the proposed conditions. But as John indicated, 55, 75, and 77 Phoenix Avenue. We have approximately 300 feet of, we're approximately 300 feet south of Route 38. We're in the light industrial zoning district. The 3 lots in total combine for about 10 acres in total, and we have about almost 500 feet of frontage on Phoenix Avenue. You can see that there's 3 buildings combined altogether. We have about 3,700 square feet of office on site right there, and about 29,000 square feet of garage. You can see that the use is an industrial garage, storage, shipping. There's a lot of equipment on site. There's a lot of vehicles that are stored there on site. The existing disturbed or degraded area, I think you can see that there's very little stabilized area, right? So one of the things that we have to do now is make sure that the surface is stable with either pavement or lumen seed, and that kind of helps from a stormwater perspective. This is a hard-packed, hard-pan, compact gravel that's devoid of any kind of topsoil on the top, and it's just been down there for probably 50 years and is a reasonable base to allow for the vehicles to pass over it. The resource areas that we have on site, so I mentioned that the site's 10 acres in area, about half of it is actual wetland. We have the 50-foot no build that's associated with that, the 75-foot no septic, which really doesn't come into play because we're not proposing septic, everything will be on SOAR. We have the 100-foot wetland buffer, and we have a floodplain at elevation 126. As I mentioned, you issued an ORAD, I believe it was in October of 2023. And then after you issued that, we followed up with FEMA and got a letter of map amendment specific to the elevation 126, which is the 100-year floodplain. So the existing stormwater management on site is non-existent. There's nothing there. There's no treatment, there's no recharge, there's no holding back of stormwater. I know a couple of you were good enough to attend a site walk with us. We kind of walked along the edge of the wetland, and there's really nothing that's distinguishing the edge of the parking area to the wetland area, other than a steep slope in a couple of locations. And you can see the vehicle equipment and storage is basically all along the wetland area. I got one more thing I just want to pass out as I walk through this. So this handout that I just provided you just kind of provides an idea of where the limit of our impacts will be relative to the existing site. And you can just kind of see that we're increasing the buffer along the entire perimeter of that wetland. Is there a way I know we provided a video, is that something that you can put on as I kind of walk through the proposed conditions, just so that they can get a sense? I think it shows really well.
Yes, we could have that.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the proposed conditions right now. So because of the size of this, because it's an active site and there are tenants on site, we're approaching this in a phased approach. So phase number 1 is to rehab the existing building at number 75. That's currently under development right now. They're doing work inside of that building to rehab that. We then move over to 55, which will be raised and rebuilt. That'll be 14,000 square feet. We then move out to the back. We raise and we rebuild 77. That's about 24,500 square feet. And then we circle all the way around eventually and get back to 75, where we knock down what we just rehabbed and put the whole, finish the whole development. So part of this is development is replacing all the existing degraded, hard-packed, unstable gravel areas with either impervious surface pavement or vegetation. We actually have a ½ acre reduction on our site of this hard-packed or unstable material. The site design was a bit of a challenge. We had to kind of segregate this into a couple of different areas. We have huge tractor trailers that are going to be an integral part of the proposal. So the challenge is trying to keep these vehicles away from the regular traveling area of pedestrians and cars, and that helped develop the site plan. From a stormwater perspective, it's pretty typical, but it is up to date and meets all of the current local and state standards. It's pieced together basically with catch basins, manholes, pipes, recharge chambers under the parking lot, water quality units, and flared-end sections. We exceed the stormwater management standards, the state stormwater management standards. It will result in a reduction in peak flow off and into the wetland. Would also result in a reduction in stormwater volume, because we'll be recharging what the state requires for us to recharge. And the stormwater treatment units will exceed what's required from a water quality and TSS removal standard. So we're fully compliant with local and state stormwater management standards. Angie's going to talk a little bit more about this, but we have a pretty well-developed landscaping plan of 20 trees and 40 shrubs. One item that we would like consideration from the board, and this is really a factor of the use and attempting to maintain the ability to allow the construction to progress in a phased manner, is that there's approximately 1,300 square feet of the building at 77, which is the furthest one in the back, that is proposed within your 50-foot buffer. The reason for that is because of the size of the vehicles that we need to allow for turning movements through that courtyard area. It allows for the construction access during construction, allows for the phasing. on average, if you look at that long side of the building and you do an average every foot, give or take, to the wetland, it's just about 45 feet on average. So while there is a small portion within 50, on average, it's about 45. What you'll notice on the site plan, on the proposed site plan, is that there's an increased buffer along the entire perimeter of the wetland. And out back behind that building, we have an access drive, which really is going to be limited to, you know, when they need to make any kind of adjustment to lighting or the side of the building. We just wanted to be able to provide a stable base so that they could bring a man truck in there and do what they needed to do. But there's no intentions for vehicles to be either stored or use that back alley. It's really just to allow access to the top of that building if and when they need it for maintenance. So the improvements that we have for this site, which we hope you can appreciate, is in the most basic terms, we're cleaning up an old, really poorly maintained site that the applicant has just purchased within the last few months. We're stabilizing a significant portion or the entire degraded area. It's a state-of-the-art stormwater management system. We're going to meet all of the standards. We have a reduction in peaks from what's out there now. We have a reduction in volumes. And then we increase recharge in the water quality. So what happens out there now is you could get stormwater discharge that comes off of that gravel area and just brings fines and particles into the wetland. Everything's going to be graded away from the wetland, captured and put into the system. And the use is consistent with the underlying zoning. So where we stand right now is that we did get a letter specific to conservation. We take no exceptions with that. We also got a letter from the city engineer. We take no exceptions with the comments that are in there. DEP has had the better part of 4-ish weeks to review. We have no comments from them. They've issued a review letter. And we got an email today from the Regional Wastewater Division. It appears they have some comments. We feel like we comply with their standards as well, and we'll work to address whatever they have. With that said, I will turn it over to Angie, and she can kind of walk you through the landscaping plan.
Thank you, and good evening. For the record, my name is Angie Verge, and I am a landscape designer and certified horticulturist with Angie Verge Landscape Design in Carlisle. I prepared the landscape plan for 55 Phoenix Ave. Just a few notes on the landscape plan and just what our overall goals were. Overall, we want to just provide a net ecological benefit to this area, as we know it's severely degraded, while also adding functional and aesthetic benefits to the property and the neighborhood. The first goal is to add more shade trees. There's really not a lot of mature trees on the site, with the exception of along the perimeters, and a majority of those are invasive poplar trees. We're going to propose the addition of 29 native landscape-sized trees, both evergreen and deciduous, to the property. And I'm defining the native range as the northeastern United States. We're also going to add 72 native shrubs, and we're basically going to have over 2 times the city's required amount of trees per parking area. The second goal is to introduce the vegetative buffers between the parking area and the resource area, as been noted on the site plan. We're going to revegetate these areas. They're previously disturbed, of course, with native trees, shrubs, and meadow plants that will hopefully compete with some of the existing invasive plants that are on site. I'm proposing some quaking aspen, some shrubby dogwood, amongst others. They're known to be colonizing plants, and hopefully they can compete against some of the existing plants that are there. The third goal is to provide an attractive planting at the property entrance, introducing shade and flowering trees. The applicants had requested of me to include pollinator plants, so there's native perennials and grasses that are included at the front of the property as well. 93% of my plant list is native, although most of the area is non-jurisdictional, but it's just the right thing to do. A couple other considerations on the plan. The proposed site will have a total of 140,000 square feet of impermeable surface and 24,500 square feet of green space, and that reflects about 17%. And the city requirement in planning is 5%, so we've exceeded that. There are lawn areas that I've designated for snow storage, and I propose placing some boulders at the back of the lawn area just to help demarcate where the snow storage area is, so some overzealous plow guys don't push the snow load into the wetland. Also proposing a native erosion control seed mix that can be proposed to the disturbed areas on the slopes that abut the BVW so that it can quickly stabilize and vegetate the area to help with erosion concerns. And I thank you, and I welcome any questions or comments.
Thanks, Angie. So were you all able to see the video that Peter pulled up on the screen?
We did not see
Available
it.
to you? No?
Yeah, I shared my
Gives
screen,
you a very good
which
sense of
usually
what the
works.
finished product will look like, so I think it's useful.
Yeah, I agree.
Peter, is there any way we can get that up, or?
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
Okay.
So other than that, we're happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that the commissioners may have. Thank you.
I have a question. So I attended the site visit, and you guys told me about the perimeter. Can you speak a little bit on what the perimeter is going to look like? I know you said there might be a wall. Could anyone speak on that?
Yes, so the second handout that I gave you kind of indicates what that perimeter would be. So the dark line on the interior along that perimeter is the edge of pavement. The walls, any walls that we're going to have out there are only going to be a retaining wall, so we don't have to get any closer to the wetland. But the buffer that you see there is what is going to be along the perimeter. Keep in mind that the largest building, right, all of the activity on site is going to be inside of that courtyard. I don't know if you can see it there.
Oh, there it is. All right, we're going through the simulation now.
Okay. Yeah, this does a better job than our 3D prints. I mean, 2D prints. I wish ours were as effective, but
Can you guys see it?
yeah, I can look over your
Right.
shoulder, yeah. So you can see in the front of the building there that they just passed, that's where about 2/3 of the pedestrian and vehicular traffic. This courtyard here is designed specifically to allow the vehicles to make the turning movements that they need to, and then we purposely provided all the loading docks in that area, try to keep everybody walking out of that area, and then the vehicles out of that area as well. Also, not that it's in your purview, but it gives you a sense for the, for the effort that the applicant's making to put in really good-looking buildings for the use. And then this is what it would look like at night. So you get a sense that, we're not going to overlight, we're not going to have light pollution. We're going to do what we need to do to just make sure that there's sufficient lighting to allow for safe access around the lot. So I'm not sure if I answered your question completely, but essentially there's going to be a vegetated buffer between any impervious surface and the landscaped area that's greater than what's out there now.
So there won't be any retaining walls.
So there are. There's 2 pinch points
along the back?
We have small walls along the back that are essentially up in this location right there.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I went on the site visit. At the existing conditions right now, in the back where all those trucks are, I'm sure a lot of them have leaks, and it's not really what we want there. I understand the building's going to be within the 50-foot buffer, but how it's going to be changed where the trucks are going to be in the center will definitely benefit the area a little bit and protect the resource. But I'll open it up to the commission for anyone else who has any questions.
I just wanted to take a sec. We got an email from the stormwater team, like right after we left today. And the team has it, but I wanted to read it for the commission because we didn't get the chance to forward it. This is from Gordon Bergeron, the staff engineer. He said, after review of the proposed stormwater management plan and drainage report for 55 to 77 Phoenix Ave, Lowell's stormwater team has concerns of this project failing to meet the city's adopted updated stormwater ordinance, and that additional information is required to support the claim that the proposed system and plan meet the state's stormwater standards to the maximum extent practicable.
So if I can just address that, we did get that this afternoon about 3:30, give or take. I reached out, wasn't able to make contact, but we did go through our review of their regulations. I think we're good, and ultimately we need to satisfy them. We're going to do whatever they need to do. Whatever we need to do, I can tell you that we meet the stormwater management standards that DEP requires.
Okay, so you could get that.
Yeah, and I think, at the end, depending on how the commission wants to do it, you could just include it in the order of conditions if you were to approve the project, that they get the stormwater permit.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions?
There wasn't any video for the back of the building that's been moved towards the wetlands. You didn't see that?
I saw it looks like it's going to be very small. I only saw it on the video like you did. It was kind of just a short.
Yeah, that's it. So there's that's exactly it. There's not going to be huge garage doors in the back and people cut it. That's not the idea. The idea is that all the activities stay within that courtyard.
Nothing's going to be parked in the back there or anything.
It's only 12 feet wide, so if some guy parked there, no one else could even drive through it, right? So, and we did that on purpose instead of making it 24 feet.
Retaining walls going back there.
Yeah, so on both long corners, where we get a little bit close to either the property line or the wetland line, we have a relatively short wall of maybe 36 to 48 inches there. And that's just so we don't have to grade further and closer into the wetland area. We wanted to maintain what was already disturbed.
I would like to say that we appreciate the fact that these particular applicants have kept us in the loop from the very beginning. This particular property has been a conservation nightmare for 20, 30 years, I'd say probably easily. And this is the first plan I've seen that actually addresses some of the issues out there and really looks like it's a solution. This is definitely a redevelopment project and definitely a restoration with the proposal to the buildings are still without the outside of the 50-foot buffer, and the edge of the area there that's being restored and vegetated is really going to help keep that edge from being degraded in the future. There is going to be some parking along the rear there, along the northern wetland boundary next to 77, but it looks like it's not going to be large enough for trucks. I could be wrong, but it looks like it might be car parking that's proposed in that particular area. Doing something around almost every edge here is certainly going to define the space that's usable rather than having constant encroachment that we've seen in the past where people just push, and accidents of dumping of fill and things like that were happening, over and over again. So I look forward to the restoration, and I think the newer buildings are really going to upgrade that whole area. These buildings were built kind of haphazardly and without too much thought, and now it looks like it's going to be more cohesive. I did have kind of a question about the proposed plantings with the vegetated areas being so close to the edge of the wetland. I wondered if perhaps plants that might be more wetland friendly might be looked into. I know junipers are really bomb-proof and don't require much care, but I always consider them kind of an upland, dry area plant rather than a wetland plant. I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but we do have, on the other side of this particular wetland along Phoenix Ave there's almost in effect a bird and animal sanctuary there. If you stand by the road and look in at where the water is pooling, you see all kinds of birds and evidence of animals using that area. And plantings that include feed for wildlife, for instance, berries or something like that. I know probably the cherries do. I'm not sure what that type of cherry, whether it has some kind of food value for birds or not. Some of them are tiny and they're still good, but I know serviceberry is almost a native plant, that it actually does flower in the spring, and there's others that can be quite attractive and probably in the long run would require less care because they're normally found in wetlands naturally. So I'm not saying that the plan has to be changed, but I'm saying I'd appreciate if you could kind of look into that and see if there's more native or higher value, food value plants or wetland plants that can be put in there that perhaps will spread and take care of themselves without having to be maintained by the property owner.
I agree. So a lot of the plants that I did put in there are fruiting plants. We have the dogwoods, shrubby dogwoods, that provide significant habitat to our birds in the fall. The reason I put in some evergreens too is because typically our native evergreens will offer shelter for a lot of our birds along the perimeters and the edges. And the reason I didn't put specifically wetland or even facultative wetland plants along the perimeters is because it is upland, and because it is very close to the pavement, it's going to dry out the soil quicker than it would if it were lower down, closer to the wetland. So I did put plants that are a little bit more variable and can handle either soils. And there are fruiting trees up in the front. I also have poplars and red oaks, which have the highest habitat. Red oaks have the highest habitat value of any native tree. But I would love to work with the applicant as well to see if they'd like to expand the shrub layer a little bit and add some more plants.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions from the commission?
I would like to say that I thought the plans were quite complete, and I think the reason we don't have any more questions is just the fact that they were rather complete.
Thank you. Jim and his team went through spent quite a bit of time on those plans. We were working on them since before the ANRAD process, so we appreciate that.
Open up to the public.
Yeah.
I'd like to open it up for the public now for any comments. If anyone here or anyone on Zoom has any comments, please speak now. Okay, can we get a motion from someone on the commission?
I move to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is closed.
Move to issue
Order of
a
conditions.
standard Lowell order of conditions based on the plans that were presented, with maybe a special condition that if there are any changes, such as to the landscaping, that we'd like to be notified. And, of course, we'd be notified anyway about any major changes in the plans, but, yeah.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I think yes, I'm moving that we issue a standard order of conditions
Okay.
based on the plans.
Motion was seconded.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for coming in.
Take care.
Moving on to our next item on the agenda was an emergency certification. Project location, 145 Boylston Street. This was an emergency certification. The applicant needed to remove overgrown vegetation and debris from Pollywog Pond outlet structure. The blockage was causing flooding and icing in the Pine School parking lot. This is the City of Lowell. Is there anyone here representing the city? Okay, I'd like to open it up to the commission for comments.
Peter, do you know if this work has been completed?
I'm not sure. They were working with the engineer's office was working with Dylan on it. So
It was issued on 1/19.
I'm assuming that since they're calling it an emergency, that they wanted to do it fairly soon. I know that area is kind of subject to, some problems as far as debris and that sort of thing. It's heavily used, so I would hope that this particular work would only be an improvement. If we need to ratify it, I'd move to ratify the emergency certificate.
Okay, motion to ratify the emergency cert. Second?
I'll second that.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Okay, on to our final item on the agenda, which was an enforcement order. Brian Kearney, 55 Brettonwood Street, project location, 100 Lexington Avenue. The violator cleared brush, vines, and other vegetation from the lot located within a 100-foot buffer zone, as well as within FEMA 100-year flood zone without Conservation Commission approval. Is anyone here speak on that?
My name is Brian Kearney.
Hi there.
How are you?
So could you please tell us a little bit about what you did?
My wife and I inherited the property from her aunt who just passed away in 2017. We inherited the property in 2020. It's 3 or 4 different pieces of property, which is 99, 100, and 110. At that time, the property had never been changed hands through anybody, so it was kind of left to us to clean up. So we've been cleaning up our property. I had assumed it was landscaping. My neighbor brought it to my attention that the tree was uprooting, and he sent me a picture of the tree being uprooted because it was covered with invasive vines. And we had the ice storm. We had a heavy ice this year with a lot of wind where the tree started to uproot, so he brought it to my attention. He's a new neighbor. He has children. I have a new child, so the tree I don't believe was in this zone. But once we took the tree down, we noticed there was trash, tires, just needles, other human used rubber gloves and things of that nature that you could find in brush. So I decided to clean it, and I've also taken away asphalt and concrete from the same location that has been used as a dumping site from, there's signs up now that say no dumping, but I've also paid $600 in mattress dumping fees on the location as well. So I was intentionally trying to clean the space, and the tree and the brush that was there, it's a corner that in the wintertime the drivers plow over and bury snowbanks in. And then if you look on Google Maps in 2012, you can see where they've actually routed out in front of the brush and in front of the area as well. I definitely did what you were saying I did. There's no question in that whatsoever. I just am, I was unaware. I assumed that it was landscaping. The town and the city came through and cut the tops of all the brush off prior to winter. And across the street, the neighbor actually mows the property. So I didn't see it as a concern in my eyes, but obviously I was wrong. So.
Yeah, so anytime you're going to do any change to the land within a wetland, you need to come before us and
100% agree.
let us know.
There's no question that what I did was inappropriate.
And a lot of,
When I saw the neighbor's property, that he mows it and that it's cared for, and the city uses that as a dumping location for plowing, and there was trash, my intent was to clean it. My intent was not to.
we see this time and time again. People come before us, they buy some new property, and no one ever told them that their property was within a wetland, and they want to build a shed in the backyard like most people want to do.
Garage on the property
And
existing, but I don't know if that actually, from what I've found and what I've looked for, because this was brought to my attention, the floodplain and the lot land looks like it follows on that corner where I was cleaning and clearing. But I had looked into the city's website and looked for flood plans or floodplain, any type of description, and even the GIS map. I tried to find the information, and it just wasn't available on the website for the city. I did find the 100-year floodplain, but it's a very, and in that section it does show a 500-year and 100-year location. So, but I did have to go.
so how many trees were actually cut down?
There was the tree that I took down. The other, I think it's a 3-piece spruce that had come down, that is still there, and you can see that from the road pictures. The only tree I took down was the leaning tree. There was another tree that was halfway, like it was just a stump that was 6 feet tall that I cut as well.
And most of it was vines.
It was all vine.
Overgrown?
I have a few pictures of it, from it leaning, from it obstructed, but they're just printouts from pictures that my neighbor sent me, essentially. He said, this is what it was.
Okay, do we have any questions, comments from the commission?
Yeah. This particular lot, I don't know how long you've been
I've been involved with my wife.
been the neighborhood there, but, it is subject to flooding. The edge of your lot, I'm sure, once Malden Avenue floods.
So,
And, you have pretty much taken down everything except right along the bank. So those luckily are the most important ones not to remove, since those roots are holding the bank, or you could find yourself with a lake there instead of dry land at some time in the future. It's very important to stabilize a lot like that has both wetlands, floodplain, and right now it's got unstabilized soil. So the soil needs to be stabilized as soon as possible, and that would be as soon as you're able to plant some kind of ground cover or grass seed or something to keep that from washing away. Every time it rains, that soil could wash down into the ponding area there, and not only would you lose your soil, but the pond would become filled up and useless to its purpose. Right now, you have a huge pile of leftover vines and things that, as part of this enforcement order, would need to be
Stopped.
removed from the site.
That's not a problem.
I guess the tree pieces have been removed. I didn't see any,
The neighbor actually came and
Trunks.
took them to burn them. So, like,
yeah.
they're piled up in front of his house.
You know, it's not a level site, and it is right on the edge of the water there, and you do need to worry about getting that stabilized. So I would say that the enforcement order would probably need to stay in place until that particular stabilization happens. And I think you probably understand now that any work on that particular lot of any kind is going to require, once you have grass growing, you can mow the grass, but that's about it, without coming to the Conservation Commission to tell us what it is that you'd like to do. And then we can perhaps suggest some ways to do it without hurting the resource area, which is all of that water and flood storage area and that sort of thing. I know you had a lot of invasives there, and, you know, I'm not in favor of harboring invasives. You had bamboo, you had bittersweet, you had loosestrife, which I particularly like, but anyway, it's an invasive. And certainly if you want to, you know, use the lot for something, you don't want a bunch of invasives getting the best use of it rather than yourself. But if you remove invasives, which we'd want to know about, and then once you do remove them, it has to be stabilized with something else. You can't just leave dirt and expect it to take care of itself. So, you know, probably hydroseeding works best if you don't want to babysit a lawn or something. But if you are planning on anything else, you need to come in here with plans and ask if it's going to be applicable to the Wetlands Protection Act.
Okay. So the order itself for restoration, from what I've heard, is you'd like me to clean up just the pile that's there, clean the space that's there, and then like I don't know if it's a sod fence, but it's, you can hay the space so that it binds the material back together in structure. Is that something that I've seen that done through the state, where they come in with the hay, or they come in with like a roll of hay and essentially lay it on top of it to maintain the soil? Or is that something that we're looking to hydroseed in the spring, and that's, as soon as spring comes, the ground will populate again with the material that was there for the vines that are close to the shore? I'm sure that will happen. It happens every year because they come back every year. So, but if that's, I just would like the expectation of what you'd like me to do for restoration, I guess. So, I'm fine with cleaning it. I'm fine with putting down a material. If you'd like me to hydroseed it, I can do that as well.
Well, the least maintenance is you could get something growing there, and then you won't have to babysit it at all. I mean, even a ground cover that doesn't need to be mowed.
Okay.
So, you know, you might have to water it a little while you're getting it going, but there's a lot of ground covers that, you know, they actually can be good for pollinators, bees and things too. Like white clover is the seeds cheap as can be, and that will take hold and bloom and really look pretty as well as green. And I've got it in my lawn, and I figure as long as it's green, I love it.
Yeah,
So,
if it's green, it's good.
Yeah.
It's just, so I'm okay with that. That's fine. Again, I apologize for taking advantage of your time.
so I'd like to move to ratify the enforcement order and keep it in place until we see some stabilization on the particular lot.
Motion to ratify.
You can just say to ratify.
Motion to ratify the enforcement order.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Motion seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
It's probably a month too early to start anything out there as far as seeding anything or whatever, but if you could get rid of that pile, that's something we would allow you to do
Okay.
as far as work on the lot.
Do I have to pull or do anything?
Get rid of
permits
that
for
pile of brush.
Is there any permits or anything I need from you to be able to remove that? Or,
I don't believe so. As long as you remove it, we can go by and make sure it's removed. And then we can talk about a plan moving forward for how you're gonna plant. You can keep in touch with our office.
okay, not a problem. I have Peter, is that yourself? Okay, so I have your contact information, so that's not a problem.
All right?
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have nothing for other business, so I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I do have a little other business.
Oh, we have some other
I guess
business.
it might be a little too late, but the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions annual convention is this Saturday, I believe, March 2nd, would it be? And that's always a good time, and some very useful workshops, and they have a nice trade show and free breakfast, and
I've
I
I've
believe-
attended in years past,
Yeah.
and it was really good, especially as a new member,
Yeah,
to kind of
they,
see what other people in the state are doing.
yeah, and they have a program where there's, I think, 6 units of fundamentals, they call it, for conservation commissioners, and once you get all 6 taken, 6 workshops, you get some kind of certificate. And I'd just like to recommend it. The Lowell should still be a member, are we, Peter? A member of MACC?
Yep, we're still a member, and the three of us are also certified conservation agents through them, so.
Because members get a reduced rate, and the city is supposed to pay for it if you put in an invoice, so. So,
Okay, so we had our motion to adjourn. Seconded? All right, motion adjourned.